Welcome everyone to the Grateful Leadership webinar, the Center for Grateful Leadership July webinar. And it seems like it's been a long time since we've all been together. And many of you are new today. We're very, very excited to have you and to have a wonderful presenter. As you know, Tom Kruse is going to be speaking about Converging BRM business relationship management with grateful leadership to evolve organizations. And that to me is a very exciting title. And I'll just say a quick welcome, Tom, now, and we'll come back to you in just a few minutes because we're going to also share something very exciting with you. And this means the world to me personally because, whoops, wait a minute, hold on. I'm trying to advance my slides. Oh, there we go. Okay. So people who are members of the Center for Grateful Leadership for a minute or more find that they want to give back, that they want to contribute something. And it takes them a while sometimes to figure out what that will be. But we have some regular contributors, and you're going to hear either from or about each one of them today. And these people truly give back in the most really heartfelt way. And I'm gonna we have Harry Waldron, who does a monthly acrostic. Don Officer writes a column called The Grateful Connection. And our relationship started when he was interviewing me for a positive psychology newsletter. And he got so entranced with grateful leadership after the interview that he said, I want to contribute something. And then Teresa Eves is our newest contributor. We'll hear from her directly. Roxy Nevin does a series of articles on grateful parenting. She can't be here today. And then yours truly, I do a podcast called The Art of Grateful Leadership, which you'll hear a little bit more about in a bit of time. So the wonderful, wonderful acrostic that we have from Harry Waldron is called Get the Right Attitude Through Gratitude. And he is always saying something positive in the most heartfelt of ways. So, and Harry is actually with us today, and I want to show you this month's acrostic. And he's been doing these for almost 5 years now. If you see the writing that goes down the side, have a great and grateful day. And Harry, you're here, right? Can we hear from you and just say what brings you to do this every month? Whether we have a webinar or not, you still do one?
Yes, thank you. And I'm really pleased, first of all, to see a good gathering of attendees. I think we have close to 90 or more coming in. So that makes all of our days, I guess, as far as our seminar is concerned.
Yes.
But this actually helps me in my work combat stress and things like that, to think more on the positive side. I do believe in the power of positive thinking, and certainly Judy's two good manuals that we have for grateful leadership, acknowledgement, and so forth. And, you know, project management is not only task driven, or, you know, we do modeling and prototyping and in agile and you know, quick rapid development, but there's a human side of that as well. And if we don't synergize as a team, if we don't include people and use their diverse talents in a meaningful way, then, you know, it hurts the company, it hurts the retention of employees. And that's what these themes kind of center on, that, you know, we do need to start off our day. And this is more of starting on the right side of the day, you know, getting up on the right side of the bed and just having a good, positive mental attitude starting off, and try to keep that going through the day as we face challenges and work with others. So that you know, is kind of like the framework of this particular one, and look forward to doing the next one. So I'll turn it back over to Judy.
You can't stop him. He's amazing. And if you take any one line from this, highlight the positive performance and accomplishments of others. I mean, that's a whole mission statement. Acknowledgement is effective when the timing and setting are well planned as well as spontaneous. I mean, he sums up the principles of acknowledgement and gratitude in these acrostics, and they're all available on the gratefulleadership.com website. It'll take us about 48 hours to get everything up there, but it will be there and you can use it. And Harry is very generous with it, and all of our contributors love it when you can benefit from what they want to give to our global community. And we really have an amazingly, global community. Now, I mentioned Don Officer before, and another thing that Harry does is he reads Don's articles, which are a couple of pages long, and he summarizes them for us. So thank you for that contribution as well, Harry. And this latest one, Don Officer is connecting it with the book Triggers, How We Can Stop Reacting and Start Healing Triggers. And the amazing thing about Don's work is that every month he does a connection to a different discipline, a different book. And that person reads like nobody else I ever knew. I mean, every month he's reading a whole, it could be a 400 or 500 page book. And he connects it with grateful leadership. And I'm so grateful for that. And I was thinking about triggers, how they really, it's interesting because he gives a quote: the past isn't even dead. The past isn't dead. It isn't even past, because we get triggered in the present. And I was thinking, what's a good example for me of a trigger? And I immediately this came up. Third grade, I was being teased by a whole bunch of boys, and I started to cry in my third grade class. And I adored my teacher. I just loved her to death. And but I was so hurt, and I'm not a good TZ. So I started running out of the classroom, and she stopped me. She said, "Judy, don't go yet. You can go, but don't go yet. I want you to smile first." Ugh. That killed my smiles on command for the rest of my life. I smiled, one of these. And then I ran out to the little girl's room. And it was just such an awful, awful feeling that now when a photographer tells me smile, I go, no. And I'm a good smiler. I love to smile spontaneously, but I'm back in third grade. So that's what Don is talking about. It's serious stuff. We get thrown into our past. And that not only blocks gratitude's flow, but it prevents us from using gratitude to undo the triggers. Because I can remember Mrs. Carol Kinnan, and I adored her. And I can remember how she was probably the best teacher of my career, my whole education. So I can remember the good when I take that trigger and sort of become aware of it. And this book, the one problem with Don's column is that I have to buy all the books he's talking about. So I bought this triggers book, and it's very deep. It really, we all have them. And how to prevent, overcome, or handle reactions to our own triggers can be very useful. And then the gratitude can flow, and gratitude can even undo triggers or have them take a different place in the way that we are. Then he also included in this column notes on a nervous planet. And it's so funny because he's talking about how his trigger, Matt Haig, is grocery stores. And if you don't get a hold of the trigger, suddenly, the grocery store can become all stores, and all stores can become the world, and then you're an agoraphobic. So there's a lot to this column, and you will be able to see it on the gratefulleadership.com website very shortly. So I thank Don. I know he couldn't be here today, I think he's at a positive psychology conference, but Don does a magnificent job of connecting us, and I love the connections. Now I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Dr. Teresa Reeves, I'm sorry. Teresa Reeves is somebody I've known for years, and I think you brought me to the Texas chapter, Teresa, Dallas-Fort Worth chapter, right? You were on the board of directors?
That's right.
Yeah, and excuse me for messing up your name. I was thinking of somebody else that came up when I said your name. So we got it straight. Teresa Eves. And the PhD is very exciting. It's in philosophy. She's a doctor of philosophy, PhD of information science and studies. So she's introduced this whole new concept of the platinum rule for project managers. And Teresa, do you want to tell us just a little bit about how this concept came to you, how it's different from the golden rule and what you plan to do with it?
Absolutely.
A couple of minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Judy, for this opportunity. You've been my partner in crime for a very long time now, and I really appreciate it.
How about partner in creation?
Oh, I like that. That's much
fun. Me too.
So I came up with this concept in 2012. And as I do with many things, I let it marinate in my brain for several years before I decide what to do with it. And where I see it most relevant to all of us, especially those of us who have teams working for us or who we work for, is this concept of we try to treat everybody the way we want to be treated because we've been taught that since kindergarten. And the truth is that's out of date anymore. We need to learn to treat people the way they want to be treated. And as Judy and I've talked about, that takes work. And there are methods to help you know how to be a grateful leader. And meanwhile, stick to the platinum rule, which is treat people the way they want it to be treated. And, you know, you can think about this in many ways. We see it every day. You know, I have an American Express card. And when I get rewards for my points, I get to pick how I use my points. American Express doesn't tell me how I will use my points. And that's kind of how our compensation and our work goes, right? We're told how much salary we're going to make. We're told what benefits we're going to get. There's not a lot of opportunity for us to get what we want out of certain situations without the other party understanding what we want. And so it takes a lot of communication, which, you know, is great to tie in the 5 C's of the power of acknowledgement as well as grateful leadership. And so it's important for us as successful project managers to be able to apply the platinum rule to our stakeholders, to our team members. And so I am going to start a blog in partnership with the Center for Grateful Leadership. And these are some of the topics of my blogs. And, you know, I published a book with IIL in 2014 called Above and Beyond, The Secrets of Outstanding Project Leadership. And I see this going that way as well. I see a book on the horizon where we're going to tackle these topics one by one.
Fantastic, Teresa. And we're really thrilled to have you do this. We have your first article on the website. It will be up in 2 days. And so anybody can find the entire thing there. Great to have you. And thanks for sticking with us. I know you brought me into different locations to speak, and it's always been a great synergy that we have, a collaboration synergy. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so now I am going to, I contribute a podcast. And let me just say that the originator of this podcast was one James G. Trella, and he's an employee of General Motors. And he took the course. You'll hear, he's going to tell you the story. I'm going to play just 2 minutes of it, but you'll hear how he just got so intrigued by grateful leadership that he approached me and he said, I'd like to do a podcast on grateful leadership and call it The Art of Grateful Leadership. And I said, wow, that sounds fantastic. And so for 3 years, every single week, he had a new podcast, every single week related to grateful leadership. I mean, through vacations, births of grandchildren, a death in his family, he's never missed a week. I have to say that. And then after 3 years, life became a little complex. And he said, Judy, I'm going to need to step aside. So why don't you take it over? And I said, no. And because I do a lot with grateful leadership, but I did not think I wanted to be out there every week with a podcast. So I'm a little bit more relaxed about it. I do it, and I love it when a good guest comes along. We don't have a rigid schedule, but let me see if I can access a little bit of this podcast. So just stand by for a moment. Whoops. Okay. Now let me, Ken Terry, if you're there, I just want to make sure that this is going to actually play. Let me see.
To share screen.
Whoops.
Then make sure the 2 boxes at the bottom left are checked.
If we don't get it, we will. I will show it to you. It will be up on the website also. Share screen. And here we go.
Then click play and it should be good to go.
Okay, I didn't check the boxes, but they may have been checked from before. So you tell me, Stephen, stop me if you don't hear anything, okay?
Yep. I hear it very little, not. So unshare your screen and just make sure the boxes are checked.
Okay, so now go back to,
The share screen button at the bottom.
yeah.
And then the bottom left.
Oh, I see. Yes, thank you. Very
Yep.
good, very good. All right. Technology is not my forte.
Then
I just
now
need
it should
to
be
get
good to go.
across important things. Okay.
So let's see, how did I get started in this? Back at the 2015 IPM Day, International
Right.
Project Management Day, that's hosted by IIL. I went out there to get, for my PMP certification. Figured that I would start, doing that. And there's a lot of great information every year that's on this, on that platform. So I went out there and there was this podcast on grateful leader, or not podcast, this course, this presentation by a woman named Judith W. Umlas, who I'd never heard of before, that talked about grateful leadership. And I listened to it and I was just amazed because it really struck that chord. Like, this is something that I understand. This is something that really touched me to the heart. Well, along with that came I believe it was a 6-hour or a 7-hour.
7.
It's the 7-hour on-demand grateful leadership course. And I said, I have to take this one because, it came with the whole package. So I took it and I just fell in love with the idea, the thoughts, working with people. It really was how I tried to live my life. And now somebody had actually come along and said, hey, this is a real thing out there. It's not just, something. There are people that agree with this. There are books on this. There's all of this going on. And I said, wow. Well, but the fun part, Judy, was when I was going through and I was doing the exercises, and one of the exercises was the knock your socks off exercise.
Yes, I
And
remember it
this
well.
particular one, I went back and searched through my whole my whole background, and one person that I had never been able to thank was a gentleman named Rod Maychek. He was one of my managers back when I was working my way through college. So it was just a couple of years ago. And when I went through and took the course, I realized I'd never thanked him. So I wrote him. I knew his email. I knew where he was working at the time. So I sent him an email, and essentially the text of the email said, "Rod, I wanted to thank you for firing me back."
So with that was what we call in the business a tease. And can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. So I want you to listen to that podcast. It really was fantastic. And we have them about every 2 weeks. We have a different podcast. And if somebody comes up with a person that they want to recommend to be on one, Tom Kruse, you better be prepared to be on one. But, I'm very open, and I love to share this work and the ideas associated with it. Okay, so now let me just go back to.
I'm not walking through the video recording.
Hold on one second.
I hear your fancy shirt back on.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I would love to introduce now Tom Kruse, who you've all heard about, and I think that's why many of you are here today, who is Director of Worldwide Advocacy for BRM, or Business Relationship Management Institute. And I met Tom in a very interesting way. I had reached out to Amy Moses, the Chief Strategy Officer at BRM Institute. And we had a really great conversation. And I was telling her about grateful leadership, and we were talking about the relationship aspect of that. And she said, "You must meet Tom Kruse. He works with us." I said, "He does?" Of course, poor Tom, he gets this all the time. And people have even asked him, we were joking about it before, "Are you the real Tom Kruse?" And he pinched himself. He said, "Yeah, I'm the real one." So anyway, Tom has been all over the world, and I think 25 countries. And he feels that every one of us is connected by the same basic human needs. And Tom actually, in his job at the Business Relationship Management Institute, cultivates relationships to help organizations satisfy their purpose. And I just love the sound of that. So Tom, let me turn it over to you. And we're just absolutely thrilled to have you with us today.
Thank you, Judy. I really appreciate that. It's a wonderful introduction, and I hope I live up to it.
Well.
And if it's all right, as I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. There is a PowerPoint to accompany this presentation. So please let me know if you can see it. I should be sharing right now.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, I can see it.
All right. Well, thank you again for that warm and wonderful introduction, Judy. As she mentioned, my name is Tom Kruse, and I'm the Director of Worldwide Advocacy at Business Relationship Management, or BRM Institute. And before we begin, I want to share with you a recent personal event that transpired during the research stages of this presentation. I was working on a project with a very tight deadline, causing a lot of stress. The main reason for that stress was the pressure of knowing that the project was not only on my shoulders, but it was dependent on my ability to work and engage with another partner. My partner, a lot like myself, is generally on time, accurate, and responsive. But unfortunately, on this particular project, I began to see less and less communication from them as time went on. And with the deadlines approaching, naturally, I began to feel anxious, and the anticipation was building up inside of me. I decided to construct an urgent, time-sensitive, stress-lined email to send to my partner. No foul intention was there, but at the last minute, I stopped. Something kind of clicked. I harnessed my instincts and instead sent a more personal, warmer email, simply asking how they were doing and wishing to connect. My decision turned out to be a good one because my partner, feeling relief, they filled me in and let me know that there had been a tragic event in their personal life. It was making it hard for them to complete their work and personal tasks. So my reaching out to them in a kind and unexpected way allowed them to open up, and I could really feel a weight lift off of them in our conversation. To my surprise and pleasure, the project was finished swiftly, charismatically, and better than either of us had expected. So what had allowed all of this to happen relates directly to what we're here to learn about today, and that is how to bring together or converge both grateful leadership and the collective BRM knowledge to help you evolve your organizations. A little bit about the agenda today. We're going to start by discussing what are deemed the neurochemical cocktails, or chemicals that come up with certain emotions and how we're able to utilize those to build trust and safety in our organizations. Then we'll talk about how the organizations we're all a part of are actually built off of the relationships that make them up. There will be a brief participation activity within it, so just be ready to participate in the chat when that comes along. And then finally, we'll talk about how you can evolve your organization, again, through BRM and grateful leadership. I'd like to start with a quote. "We are not thinking machines that feel. We are feeling machines that think." This is stated by a well-renowned neuroscientist and author, Dr. Antonio Damasio, who essentially maintains that feelings and emotions are in our DNA. When we feel a certain way, chemicals get released that then impact our emotions and how we react and respond. The strongest of these emotions really are formed by the human bond that we have with others. To elaborate on that, just consider the last time you attended a sporting event, or went to a music concert, or simply went out to a nice dinner. You felt the energy of everybody else around you, and that is because we humans are social creatures. 200,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens first emerged, we were not the strongest, we were not the smartest species. We certainly weren't even the strongest or smartest in the Homo genus. However, what allowed us to survive for so long and thrive into becoming what we have today is our ability to come together, to build bonds and form communities based off of culture that we create and social structures. Over time, as humans were able to take care of their water immediate needs, take care of their food, find shelter and safety, this allowed more time and energy to dedicate towards each other. And that goes directly alongside what Abraham Maslow, a psychologist in the mid-20th century, proposed as the hierarchy of needs. And what this hierarchy maintains, as Judy alluded to earlier, is that we all have the same basic human needs that once are taken care of, ultimately culminate in what is called self-actualization, or the ability to be the best that we can be. And you'll notice that the two needs in the middle, love and belonging and esteem, are directly tied to our social creatures. The fact that we need intimacy with others around us to feel safe, that we desire respect from others to feel confident in what we're doing and what we're maintaining and moving forward. This is why things like grateful leadership, acknowledgement, and appreciation are so important. Because every time you appreciate someone, you're able to satisfy their needs for love and belonging and esteem. This ultimately builds trust in your relationship and safety to do and act how you'd like to feel. Now, what allows us to build that trust and safety through these interactions? I'd like to introduce serotonin, or the happy hormone. This is the first chemical in the neurochemical cocktail as deemed by Linda Rozak Burton in her article, The Neuroscience of Gratitude. Think about the last time you sat down to write a list of what you're grateful for, or simply thought about what you feel grateful for. That little boost of happiness that you feel is coming from the serotonin being produced in your system. And in her online training course, The Power of Acknowledgement, Judith Umlas maintains that not only is it gratitude that boosts our mood and improves serotonin production, but gratitude correlates very deeply to acknowledgement and appreciation. So every time we express gratitude, every time we appreciate another person, serotonin is produced in our system, and that improves our mood, makes us feel motivated, and boosts our confidence. A group of scientists from the UCLA maintained this by actually artificially increasing the serotonin levels in a select group of vervet monkeys. And this select group was actually quickly able to climb through the ranks to the more alpha positions within their society. They were behaving in ways that appeared more calm, self-assured, less impulsive, and confident. Meanwhile, the others with lower levels of serotonin appeared as more fidgety and anxious. This is why we appreciate and look for confidence in our leaders, and why Fortune's 100 Best Companies to Work For looks to thanking or showing appreciation and recognition as one of the 9 factors that make the best places to work. In her book, The Power of Acknowledgement, Judith maintains among one of her 7 principles that recognizing good work leads to high energy, great feelings, high quality performance, and terrific results, thanks to serotonin. On the flip side, not acknowledging good work causes lethargy, resentment, even sorrow and withdrawal from those around us. It can make us feel invisible or unappreciated. And unfortunately, the next chemical within the neurochemical cocktail falls alongside this and is not quite as positive: cortisol, or the stress hormone. From an evolutionary standpoint, our ancestors needed cortisol when faced with danger. Cortisol is the first step in the fight or flight alarm system. It shuts down all non-essential systems when faced with a threat. What it does then is it uses that energy to help us fight stronger or run faster. What the systems, unfortunately, that it does shut down have to do with the digestion, reproduction, physical growth. And unfortunately, in today's workplace, we still feel this same stress that produces cortisol. Imagine you in a workplace feeling that your boss is breathing down your neck or micromanaging you. You feel inundated by emails, incredible deadlines that you don't feel like you can meet. You don't feel seen or appreciated by those around you. Every single one of these is constantly dripping cortisol in your system. And to make matters worse, cortisol inhibits serotonin production. So the more that you feel stressed, the less room you have for that happy hormone to make you feel more motivated and confident. On an individual level, this is detrimental. Think about the long-term healthcare implications. As you feel so much cortisol within your system over time, we can feel anxious, depressed, even create things like heart attacks, heart disease, and stroke. So this can be very, very difficult and powerful and heavy for individuals. And unfortunately, on a societal level, it's an epidemic. The American Institute of Stress put together a number of worrying statistics from a group of studies and research that took place in about 2019. They found out that work is among the top 3 leading causes of stress in the United States, with 97% of us suffering from work-related stress. Have any of you on the call been stressed out by work? You probably fall among this 97%. I know I have, just like within my story a little bit earlier. And of those who are stressed out, which are basically everybody, 57% of us have felt paralyzed by stress. What's more, 63% of us have been ready to quit because we're so stressed out. It's anticipated that 25% of us, or a quarter of the working population, may burn out within 12 months. And the most worrying statistic is that 76% of us said that stress at work affects our relationships at home. Stressed out parents, unfortunately, cause stressed out kids who are statistically more likely to become bullies in school and cause more stress around them, just adding to the problems of the cortisol epidemic. Unfortunately, much of this is stemmed from the antiquated organizational structures within which we work. So what can we as individuals within our organizations do to change this narrative? That's how I'd like to introduce the last chemical in our neurochemical cocktail called oxytocin, or the relationship hormone. As we feel gratitude and express appreciation to others, alongside serotonin, oxytocin is produced. Why is it that we shake hands with someone for the first time when meeting them? Or during COVID, perhaps it's an elbow bump or a fist bump. Nonetheless, we need that physical touch, because when we touch somebody and don't feel harmed by them, our bodies say, okay, I can trust this person. And they release oxytocin, making us feel trusted, safe, improving our immune system. Another way that oxytocin is produced is through human acts of generosity. And that is exactly what appreciation and acknowledgement are. It's generosity. As you appreciate somebody, you build those feelings of trust and safety. You make a better relationship with them. That in turn increases the oxytocin output, which coincidentally actually makes us more generous. A commonly recognized law in the neuroscience community is called Hebb's law, that says nerves that fire together wire together. In other words, the more oxytocin we can produce and feel, the stronger the bonds become and the more generous and appreciative we are. I'm sure all of you have experienced this if you've ever practiced gratitude or grateful leadership. So with that in mind, how does this translate to the organizations within which we work? Well, it's likely that acknowledgement within our organizations can improve the physical and emotional health of both the giver and the receiver. So when you appreciate someone at work, Judith again maintains from her book, The Power of Acknowledgement, that can improve your health. And thanks to the relationship hormone, great relationships can improve the well-being of both people within it. Taking a look at the way the organizations are structured, we're all familiar with this model. It is antiquated, considering how leadership at the top makes all the decisions and sends that down the ranks through direct and controlled leadership style, keeping everyone individual in silos so that there's not as much interaction and they more or less just listen and do. This builds low trust, low safety, low motivation within our workplaces. It's not a great environment. In fact, it's a great breeding ground for cortisol. Consider if you don't enjoy or get along well with your manager, you don't trust them as well. You don't have a strong relationship or bond with them. And the thing is that this can change. Leadership is not a rank. Leadership is a mindset. It's a choice. And organizations today are starting to recognize this by evolving towards a relationship-centered organization where people act with shared ownership of an organizational purpose. They want to partner with those around them and actually see them succeed. This is where things like appreciation come into play. No longer do we focus on profit as a single bottom line. While it is important for keeping organizations continuing, we're able to expand our focus to the triple bottom line of people, purpose, and the planet on which we all live. Now, to take this down to a more personal level, I'm going to ask each of you on this presentation to sit there and consider your R, or the best working relationship you've ever had. Picture that person in your mind. Think of the fun you had together, the creative sharing and the mutual growth that occurred. What types of feelings arise when you consider this person and think about the way you worked with them? And that's why now I'd like to take a brief moment to ask each of you to input what you felt when working with this person. So if you could just take a moment to add those to the chat. I'm going to pull up the chat box here and simply just read some of those words that you place in there. I'm loving these words so far. We're seeing things like appreciated, safe, respected, valued, energized, creative, confident, collaborative, comfortable, friendship, satisfaction, supportive. Amazing. As I think about every single one of these words, my opinions mattered. Exactly. You feel in a safe environment, able to be yourself, able to share your thoughts, share your emotions, and know that you're feeling heard. When you feel these types of emotions with someone, serotonin levels shoot up, oxytocin levels shoot up, and you feel more motivated, more acknowledged, more confident to do the best work that you can. So now imagine that if you had this type of relationship with every single person on your immediate team, what could you accomplish together? And I'd encourage you to take that one step further to think about if every single person who had anything to do with your organization had this type of relationship with everyone around them, what could your organization accomplish together? What could you achieve with a thriving network of relationships within a relationship-centered organization? Now, with that in mind, I'd like to take a brief moment to just kind of recap a lot of the learning that we've done today. So far, we've learned that humans are social creatures. And while we like to think logically, we are inherently feeling creatures. We've learned that appreciation can improve our well-being by increasing serotonin levels. We've also learned that antiquated organizational structures harm our well-being by increasing cortisol levels. We've also learned, luckily, that great relationships improve the well-being of both people thanks to the relationship hormone oxytocin, and that organizations are made up of a network of relationships. And I'd encourage us to go one step further and recognize that we can improve our relationships and therefore our organizations by directing and channeling our time and energy. And how do we go about that? By converging business relationship management with grateful leadership. Now, I'm going to cover a little bit about BRM, a little bit about grateful leadership, and then go into and conclude with how we can bring these two together. So what is business relationship management, or BRM, as I will refer to it? Well, the purpose of BRM is to connect relationships to results for an organization to continue moving. And we do this through the mission of BRM, by evolving culture of the organization, by building partnerships with the individuals around us, by driving value and measuring it, and by satisfying purpose, both individual and organizational. The BRM capability exists as not only a capability, but a role and a discipline. So you practice your BRM role while being supported by tools, techniques, metrics, and methodologies through the BRM discipline, ultimately producing results through the BRM capability that connects every level of the organization, that connects every function of the organization through relationships. Just like leadership being a mindset, there's also a BRM mindset. That means you're relationship centered and focused on those around you. Playful, being willing to have fun every day in the workplace. Being self-actualized, working towards being the best you, as Maslow's hierarchy of needs said. Being fearless in what we do and purposeful in how we do it. One of the best ways to do that is through practicing grateful leadership. From her book, Grateful Leadership, Using the Power of Acknowledgement to Engage All Your People and Achieve Superior Results, Judith Umlas says that grateful leaders are those who see, recognize, and express appreciation and gratitude for employees and other stakeholders' contributions, and for passionate engagement on an ongoing basis. This is leadership at its finest as a practice. Judith also includes a few tools to help us get there towards acknowledging others, such as the 7 principles of acknowledgement, which we've touched on a bit today. And also the 5 C's of acknowledgement, which teach us how to be fearless in stepping forward and showing our appreciation for others. Now, how do these two practices converge? As we know, grateful leadership is focused on human emotions, and we as emotional creatures love that. Emotions are traditionally intangible, but we all are able to connect to those same feelings and needs that we have. So while it's intangible, we recognize and understand it. And it's appreciation driven by simply just saying thank you. And it gets a little bit more complicated than that, but it truly is as easy as showing how you feel in your heart. And BRM takes it from an organizational perspective. It says, what is our organization's purpose? Why are we here? And then making strategic steps to reach that purpose across the entire organization. It's purposeful. It's measurable. BRM has a wide variety of tools and techniques and metrics that we can use to actually measure and appeal to that logical side of our brains and logical sides of our organizations. It's also value driven rather than simply cost focused. We want to drive into the future. By converging the two of these together, we're able to build leaders within the relationship-centered organizations and ultimately improve the network of our relationships, one relationship at a time. Now, how do we go about doing that? As I mentioned, the mission of BRM, we're going to conclude with how this mission converges with grateful leadership. The first one is evolve culture. Consider how we think affects how we act. How we act ultimately incorporates the culture itself, and it forms the culture over time. All the actions of the relationships within an organization form that culture, which ultimately impact how we think, and the cycle continues. If we can think by taking an organizational purpose and working with shared ownership to reach those results, and we act with appreciation, genuinely and sincerely appreciating those around us, then we can begin to build those relationships, increase those serotonin and oxytocin levels within and among our relationships, improving and opening up creativity, motivation, confidence. While this is more of an organizational view, how do we do that on an individual basis? That's where building partnerships comes into play. Consider again how we think together, how we act together, and how we achieve together. Thanks to BRM, the strategy for the organization is intertwined from everything that we do from the beginning. As such, new projects and investments are routinely linked to that organizational strategy and purpose. Ultimately, projects end up being more on time, on budget, and measured, taking elements from things like project management and agile, working together to complement those types of practices as well. Through grateful leadership, we do this by thinking that we will sacrifice time and energy for the relationship, but in the end, it's not sacrificing at all. If we can genuinely appreciate and give our time to others, they will turn around and do that the same to those around them. By acting and showing appreciation authentically, we build trust, safety, and motivation so that we can build leaders around us. The CEO of BRM Institute, Aaron Barnes, maintains that great leaders build great leaders in everyone around them. This is the relationship-centered organization. But again, I mentioned that BRM also appeals to the logical side of our brain by driving value and measuring that value with various tools, such as the business value ability. Now, this chart is accompanied with other metrics and numbers and forms that you can fill out to assess where you stand in your value ability and reach forward and grow over time to ultimately optimize everything you do. Because the greatest indicator of BRM success is being able to articulate the business value coming from the relationship. And the very last element of how we go about this is by satisfying purpose. Focusing on the personal purpose and noting that what we do every day impacts our organization's purpose, working together towards shared ownership through our actions, through what our organizations create as being relationship-centered, and the activities that we do every day ultimately impact society. So evolving again from that profit bottom line to the triple bottom line of people through our relationships, of purpose and planet. Once more, we've learned today that humans are social creatures that are also feeling machines that think, and those feelings are affected by the very neurochemical cocktails that make us up. We as individuals are part of organizations that are built around relationships, and we can improve our relationships and therefore our organizations by directing and channeling our time and energy. We do this through a convergence of grateful leadership and BRM to ultimately evolve culture, build partnerships, drive value, satisfy purpose, and make the organizations within which we work trusting, safe environments for everyone. I want to thank every one of you for taking the time to listen to this presentation and for coming today to listen to not only myself, but Judy and everybody else that were on it. And I would gladly take the rest of this time to welcome your questions. I'm going to hand it over to Stephen now to sort of explain the process for answering these questions, and I am here to do so.
And let me just say, Tom, that you've done an outstanding job of combining your vision with a blueprint. How do we do this? It's so tangible and so actionable. And I'm truly grateful to you. And I have to say, Amy Moses, Chief Strategy Officer of Business Relationship Management Institute, thank you. She just knew that we would really converge with our ideas and our philosophies and our feelings. And Amy, that was just a wonderful match. So thank you for doing this. And I also am going to, maybe you want to stop sharing your screen and I'll go back to mine, but let's take some questions first. Let's do that. Keep this up for a little while.
Certainly.
Hey everyone, for the questions at the bottom of your Zoom app, there should be a reactions button. And just when you click that, just click raise hand, and then Judy or Tom will just pick whoever has their hand raised. So we can just get some more interaction instead of just typing in the chat.
And the chat is fine too. If anybody would rather just write it rather than say it, you're welcome to do that. You got a great job here, Tom. Thank you.
Oh no, it seems like it's stunned silence, I'm afraid.
Okay, Susan has a comment. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Susan.
I tried to raise my hand. There's no hand raised, so I did a thumb up. I just wanted to say, yeah, this is really excellent. I really appreciate it. My challenge is one of my clients has a culture that is almost completely opposite of grateful leadership, and I found myself in an environment that I knew I did not love being in, and then realized after some time, I was like, oh, this is the exact opposite of grateful leadership. So one day I'm going to write an article for you about that, Judy, to share.
Love it.
But the positive, because I always like to find a positive, is that sometimes being in an environment that's the exact opposite of what you like just supports why you care so much about an environment of gratitude. And so I'm a grateful leader, I'm a servant leader, and I'm in an environment, one of my clients, and I won't say who because it's nothing nice that I'm saying, one of my clients is into bullying. I don't even know if delegating is a fair term, but maybe very demanding, very unplanned type of environment where just people kind of railroad each other, or a lot of lying, and just a really, I would say, a toxic organization. And I'm trying to figure out how to shift that. And I'm not going to be able to shift the whole organization. It's a very large organization, but if I could just shift some of the people I work with, it would make a huge difference. And that being said, I have to go because I have a meeting that I have to go to right now. But this has been really great. So I thank you for the thoughts about it. And if you want to talk on after I leave.
Oh, Cabo.
I think that would be a good conversation. And Susan, I'll take you up on the offer of an article on, it's really a toxic culture, and how grateful leadership and business relationship management together can make a huge difference. So thank you for that. And Purple, I don't know if that's your real name. This is my favorite color, but he says, Tom, is that Purple speaking? No.
No, this is Purple.
Oh, hi, Purple.
Hey, Judy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic after this being able to join the presentation this month after a long time.
Happy to have you. And
And
I
looks
like
like
what you wrote.
there's a little bit of feedback. If somebody could perhaps mute. Oh, thank you.
She especially liked learning about the cocktail
Mm.
and the blueprint.
Continue.
Pete, you have feedback, so remain muted.
And I
Yes.
believe Irish has raised their hand as well. If you'd like to take yourself off mute, Irish, I can. If you have a question, I'd love to answer it.
Yeah, with regard to that situation, I really appreciate that. I've attended this this webinar because I just had a conversation with my manager, and I feel like it's the total opposite of what had happened in our conversation. So if that is the case, say for example, it was your manager who's actually creating a toxic environment for you, how are you going to, approach your manager in a point that, because I am a project coordinator and I feel like if I speak to my manager about that, it's going to be taken against my performance appraisal. So it's more like I'd rather not to speak at all because of that. So how are you going to approach if that is your manager?
Absolutely. And first of all, I want to say that that's a difficult position that you find yourself in. It's a difficult balance to work out. There are a number of ways that you can go about it, right? It does depend on the situation, on how, their personality, kind of even incorporating the platinum rule, right? How does your manager want to receive criticism or feedback if they see themselves as being criticized when you approach them? There's a single global BRM community that you can lean on if you do enjoy the BRM practice and such, and speak with them and learn about their experiences and such. But for this particular question, I would actually like to defer to Judy, because this really does feel like a grateful leadership sort of question and answer. And you're on mute, Judy.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, I mean, when we end up in, not all cultures are toxic, but when you don't feel visible, when you don't feel known, when you don't feel appreciated, then there are certain things that I would advise. And one is to have a conversation, either one-on-one or in a group, and really explain, you just took a course, you sat in on a class. A lot of people have used that as an excuse. And here's a poster of the 5 C's of acknowledgement. Maybe we can incorporate this as a practice in our, weekly meetings or daily meetings. Who are we going to acknowledge today? You just have to kind of deflect the negativity and start bringing positives in. And when you start practicing this also, other people want to know, how did it happen that your people are so engaged when others are just like really unalive and not engaged? So I think that it's really, there are many things you can do proactively. And one of them, I want to also just give a few closing slides, Tom, so people know how to reach me and to reach out as needed. So let me just share my screen and go back to the slides we were seeing. And from the current slide.
Perfect. We can see your screen.
Good. Okay. So, whoops, I think I did not advance them, so forgive me. Here's a quick review of Tom's presentation. We should remember it all. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to mention a couple of things. One, I did mention to people before that the Art of Grateful Leadership podcast is open. I mean, if you have somebody you'd like to recommend to me, it's judy.umlis@iil.com. And if you would like to recommend somebody to be a guest presenter, that would also be a way. Reach out to me on judy.umlis. And Tom, a number of people have asked in the chat if you're willing to make your slides available so that they can download them. I don't know what the policy of BRM Institute is on that. What do you think?
I can share a PDF version with them if that's all right.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Yes.
All right, wonderful. And so that was I saw that comment or question several times. And then Tom, you were kind enough to mention the 6-hour Power of Acknowledgement course that I shared with you, because as you were putting your presentation together, we were feeling all the natural synergies, but you really picked up on some of the key elements of it. And anybody who would be interested in a group license for your team, or if you would like to take it individually, if you go to www.iil.com and be sure to use the promo code GRATEFUL at checkout, then you'll get a 20% discount on it. So I invite you to take a look at that and to share it. Once people take a course, I mean, those of you who are in this webinar today, I'm sure you would say if your manager had been here with you, that there would have been an impact. I know there would have been an impact. We all know that. And so this is a way of sharing the blueprint, sharing the vision. And we invite you to take advantage of that. So another very handy way to hear about events that we have is through the Center for Grateful Leadership, which is free, but I've been told that it's priceless. The experience of being a member of the community is priceless. So I think that we are happy to take other questions. Tom, if you have a few minutes.
Pete has a question. Pete has his hand raised.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I heard this Tom Kruse presentation. It is really wonderful. I never thought I would be listening to this kind of presentation. I was just working a few days back on the diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, the topic what you covered is perfectly fits in the inclusion. In every organization in America right now are going through the tough time after the COVID impact.
Yes.
And employees are not coming back to the job. And I was trying to understand where we have failed, where employers have failed. So a couple of things came in my mind. We have got a fantastic technological innovation and revolution in a way in technology for last 25, 30 years. And economic revolutions have happened many times. But one thing has never happened is the workplace innovation and revolution has never happened last 100 years. And the workplace is the place after the home is the next place for all human beings is the workplace. And then come the country. Country doesn't come first. Family comes first. Individuals, then the family. Then after family, the next step, we grow up in the society, it is the organizations. Then third comes the country, then the continent and the planet Earth. So in this hierarchy, the number 2 you are addressing is so important. The organizations are failing and becoming obsolete. And what is missing is this gratitude leadership is one of them important component, I realized it. And what you have said for last 10, 15 minutes is so wonderful. I'm really grateful to you. And we should take this message to every organization. And that is how we can take this humanity to the next stage. Otherwise, companies are collapsing and become outdated, and human beings are suffering. And we don't know next 5, 10 years what will happen when the automation kicks in. 50% of the people right now in America who are blue collar or white collar will be without job. And how to handle them, we don't know that one.
Mm.
The gratitude in leadership is one of the components to create the hope and also share the work and also respect each other. That what you said, there are a lot of things can be connected. So that's what I wanted to say. And I would like to be connected with your organization or talk with you separately after this lecture. I would appreciate if you could share your number or anything. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, Pete. And you raised some incredible points in that the future can be scary and uncertain, right? But the more we're able to lean into each other and feel that trust and safety, the more we're going to be able to come out of it together and change and evolve the organizations. Yeah, I would be more than happy to include my email. I can do that in the chat. Or Judy, do you have any follow-up processes for the best ways for people to reach out?
Yes, we do. We have a recap that will go out in a few days. And everybody who is registered for this webinar will get the recap, and it'll be a link to you and the presentation, and you can tell us how you'd like people to contact you as well.
Certainly. And thank you again, Pete. And there were a few more questions I noticed in the chat from Ricky and Ben. Judy, do we have time to answer those? How would you like to?
Yes, I mean, we can stay. I keep this the door open till 2:30, but anybody who needs to leave, the presentation is officially over. So we've gone through all the content. Now the rest is just dialogue.
Okay.
Would you want me to stop the recording? Or you want me to get the rest of the questions
I
on the
think you should
recording?
get the rest of the questions.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, I would like to then address Ricky's question. How would, actually, Ricky, if you'd like to ask it in person, you can. If not, no worries.
No problem. I was kind of like trying to type it real quick here.
Totally.
The question is, you know, I'm usually, I come into organizations when they need really bad assistance, and it's usually I'm a fixer, I transform businesses, but it's really the transformation of how team members communicate with one another, bringing them to the table, changing how they collaborate, and just bringing the different pieces and removing siloed tendencies, institutional silo tendencies. But how do you know, I was thinking of how can I get them more engaged like day one rather than 3 weeks later? I mean, it's a very costly endeavor for a company to bring team members and collaborators, you know, to change the culture, especially because they've been in such a toxic culture within their work environment for so long. Their tendency is to shy away and go, oh, this is just another gimmick and, you know, lip talk, but nothing's going to change. So in order to get them to kind of start getting out of their shell, is there some technique or something that can be set up front during that first initial 1 or 2, you know, few meetings, just to get them to understand that they're in charge of what the culture is?
That's a fantastic question, Ricky. I could go on asking more questions about this, but just to sort of, I think I'm understanding what you're saying in terms of just in those first initial meetings, really, if people are so jaded by their culture and so untrusting, you know, of others, that they're not going to come out of their shell, and you really need to be the one to lead. And I think that's where leading authentically and leading with grateful leadership would likely be the first step to doing that. Possibly, you know, knocking their socks off, right? Using Judy's words, is to do something that really just kind of gets them, again, to stop and think and be like, okay, why do I have the feels right now, right? And then following up with them and saying you know, I'm practicing techniques from something that truly matters and comes from the heart of appreciation. And then when they'll probably, I would imagine, kind of, if they are able to open up, their next question would be, well, I don't feel safe to necessarily, you know, practice this within the organization. And you can share Judy's tools to do that sort of thing. But from a business relationship management side, we we like to share the idea of celebrating quick wins, right? So you can empower them with some of the BRM tools, such as the value plan. So that they could fill out and say, here's the plan that I have for creating value. It's an idea we have. We're going to go down this path, and just get them to share that with their, what we'd like to call partners, right? But they might see as managers or whatnot. But the ability to show, this is the value that I'm going to share with you and create, and follow up on it quickly, that's what starts to open people's minds. And then they can begin to build that relationship using various techniques and tools. Does that answer your question? Is that helpful?
That is helpful. No, I generally walk into these meetings, you know, the initial meetings, and they're usually at the top level. And I'm very blunt and forward and go, you know what, you guys have brought me here and it's going to cost you a lot of money and you're in trouble. So, you know, this is why you brought me in. And I generally turn things upside down and inside out to really get to the core issues. And 9 out of 10 times, it's the culture, and it's the culture from the top down, where people have been shut out, stopped from, you know, giving their opinions or making it better because, you know, it's being shoved from the top down rather than from the bottom up. And when I get to meeting with managers and even the lower level tiers, you know, I walk in there and I'm like, I empathize with them. I know what they're feeling. I know how they're feeling. They're frustrated. They know their jobs better than anybody else, and no one's listening to them. And so I generally end up having one-on-ones for quite some time before I can even go, okay, this is where we're going to start. And so I'm just, you know, is there any new techniques, and maybe a survey at the front, and it's anonymous, you know, unless they want to maybe come up in one of the meetings. And I'm like, hey, I got a great idea from somebody. And I generally will post it up there and I go, this is a great idea. Has it been tried in the past? What didn't work? Why didn't it work? And then that's how I start getting them to kind of come out of it. But it does take that an enormous energy and a lot of time. When sometimes these businesses or teams don't have that much, the luxury of time.
And Ricky, I just want to say, Amy Moses, the Chief Strategy Officer of Business Relationship Management Institute, said, sounds like you're a BRM, Business Relationship Manager already, Ricky. You have all the skills and talents.
Yeah, as a business analyst, you know, as strategist, you know, consultant, I have to bring all of this together. It's a psychological, anthropological reasoning behind it. And it's all about the humanity in us. And it's like, once you get down to that sheer level, then you start understanding the people and you get the buy-in. It's like you have key people that are influencers, and they don't realize that they're influencers. And so it's like finding those key people down at the bottom, then they start getting other people involved. And so it takes a lot of energy, but it's like sometimes, you know, I've come into a business where if they don't turn it around within 4 weeks, they're shutting their doors down. And so how do you know, it's like, and then at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you reality. Reality is 4 weeks from now, if you don't change this business and your salaries, and you guys are going to be out the door. And so it's been a hard conversation, not only for the owners or the CEOs and the marketing and all these guys that go, I have a master's or a PhD and I know what we're doing. I go, well, apparently not, because you have, you know, X amount of days before you shut down. So
well, feel free to contact Tom or me afterwards, and we're happy to help in any way that we can. And we'll be sharing materials with you.
Appreciate everything. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, anybody else before we wrap up? This has really been an exciting event.
I believe there's one last one.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So Ben, if you're still on the call, if you'd like to ask your question. If not, I think it's still a valuable question and I will read it out of the chat. He might not still be here. So any further elaboration around timing with techniques when one's level of cortisol is high? For example, he mentioned when a strategic pause, right, before sending a difficult email to get everything back on track, right? And I would recommend, if you ever feel yourself, if you're able to recognize that you are stressed, and anytime you're communicating with another person when you're stressed, just take a moment. Just take a moment to pause and say, how do I want to speak with them? How am I thinking of speaking with them? And how might they receive this? If it is not acting out of, appreciation or sort of coming from a warm atmosphere, if it comes from an idea of me pushing information or problems their way, then you might reevaluate, because there's always problems that you need to address with people, right? But if you're able to construct it in a manner of saying, okay, I'm able to identify this is what's going on, let's work through this together. That is a much better wording to sort of go through something and say, we're in this together. It's not me versus you.
Hi, this is Harry. I just wanted to maybe add something. It might be helpful for Ricky. When we have those non-grateful environments or people that we're working with, we cannot easily change others. And that ties into Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, tier 1, et cetera. And we just have to realize that, work patiently with people. And even when we work with people with traditional management techniques, we just have to carefully keep that in the back of our mind, be real to people and genuine, and, just have that sense of gratitude and affirmation of others. But it's a slow process. If it was easy, Judy wouldn't need these monthly or bi-monthly sessions. And I would just encourage folks to come back and get more in 2 more months.
I know I will be.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say before we close out, I'm not sure if Shana Serrano is still here. Shana, are you here?
I am still here. This has been an
Oh.
excellent call.
Oh, I'm so glad you were here. And Shana, I'm excited to say, is going to be the September speaker, and she's got the most amazing story. And I just will tell the brief version, which is that Shana and I met when the University of Maryland University College adopted the power of acknowledgement for all the graduate programs in project management. And Shana was in that at the time, and I led webinars once a semester for all the students. Shana, where did you tune in from that day? Where were you?
Camp Habaniya, Iraq.
U.S. Air Force, right?
Yes, on an Army tasking.
Wow. Okay, so can you just say a couple of words about your dissertation that you're writing and devoting several years to?
Several years. That's such a good way of saying it, because it
feels like a lifetime.
It is a lifetime. It starts off and you go, oh, I'm gonna get through this so quickly, and I'm just gonna, go. And then you slow down, and I'm currently struggling my way through my chapter 3. Once I finish up my chapter 3, then I'll actually be ready to start the study. And the study is on grateful leadership. I'm hoping to create a study that will help measure the return on investment that leaders achieve by participating in grateful leadership training, grateful leadership events, and what I'd really like to do out of that is it's a quantitative study, and like I said, in order to measure return on investment. And then so at the end of that, I'm hoping to prove the value in a way that people can understand, because when you talk people, you talk talk soft skills, and when you talk money or budgets, you talk, money, ledgers, accounting, people can see numbers and they go, oh, that makes a whole lot of sense. But like we were talking about today, it's relationships, and it's those relationships that build, that make companies succeed. It's, it's the culture, like Ricky was saying, it's, the relationships, like the presentation today, which was so perfect for me today because it just spoke to my soul about some of the struggles I deal with on a day-to-day basis in my office. And but so, yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm going down a rabbit trail. I'm gonna pull myself back up to my dissertation.
It's okay, Shana.
Yeah, and so, so the dissertation, I'm looking to have chapter 3 finished either hopefully by the end of mid to end of August, and then I can move into the actual study portion where I'll be reaching out. In September, I will be briefing or presenting to you and your wonderful people how I'm going to, my intention is to kind of walk you through how I'm going to do the study as a precursor to the defense that I'll do once the study's concluded.
When I hear about this, Shana, I really feel that this is the missing piece for grateful leadership. Now, I don't know if business relationship management has that missing piece also, to prove the ROI of something that we all know instinctively, intuitively, on a gut level. It makes a huge difference in terms of engagement, retention, all the other factors that are, measurable, but people have not put the ruler to it yet. And Shana is going to be doing that. And I am so grateful to you, Shana, for you have stuck with this. It's been like 14 years from the power of acknowledgement to grateful leadership. And even You're Totally Awesome, the power of acknowledgement for kids. I remember when you were reading A Cupcake for Hector to your children from an army base when they were in the US. There was
on a little DVD on 2007, 2008 was when I was in Iraq, and we had these little DVDs that the USO provided where you could record a story and send it home, and I did the cupcake for Hector.
Oh my gosh. So Shana, we're all very lucky to have you providing or working on providing the missing piece. So if she invites you to be in a survey, we would love your support to take her up on it, because this will help us measure, and it'll be very clear what she's trying to demonstrate and how she'll do it. So anyway, on that note, I want to wrap up today's session. This has been amazing. Tom, thank you for an outstanding presentation. We had a wonderful gathering of people, one of the largest we've ever had. So I want to thank you. And I mean, many, many more people will see it when it's in the archives, but live, this is record breaking. And I'm very grateful to you and to Amy Moses for really devoting the time and energy and effort to making this happen and to doing it so thoroughly and so well and such a heartfelt way. The whole thing resonated with me, every point that you made.
Well, thank you, Judy. The feelings are mutual, and I'm incredibly grateful for this opportunity as well. And just to have worked with you, it's been a genuine pleasure.
Likewise, and we will continue the collaboration in one form or another. I think you need to write a white paper on this.